Hope all is well.
By grace.
Amen.
Yeah.
The ball is in your court now.
Thank you, sir. All right. Good evening once again, dear students and the public at large. It's going to be another beautiful section of a radio lecture series on the course EDCR 232, Principles and Practice of Teaching. To do the honors today is myself, Miss MIRIAM of the Department of Educational Foundations, Faculty of Educational Studies. As usual, the lecture will take place for about 45 minutes, after which the phone lines will be activated, and so you'll be expected to send your text messages, ask questions, seek clarifications on the various social media handles. So we are live on Radio WINNEBA 98.3. The studio lines are 0503 923158, 0332320201. WhatsApp line 0503 923158. I keep reminding our dear students that it is very important for you to save the various studio lines on your phone. You can as well reach us on Facebook at Radio WINNEBA 98.3 FM, at Twitter WINNEBA 983 FM, Instagram we are there, YouTube, and I hope by now you are familiar with the various social media handles. As I said earlier today, when the phone lines are activated, today we're going to have a very interactive session. It's going to be on the principles of teaching. So before you ask a question, make a contribution, seek for clarifications here and there, an opportunity will be given for you to celebrate that teacher who taught you way back at basic school, JHS, senior high school, college of education, or even here, to share one or two principles about that teacher which you still remember. And so note it there. Now, in the previous weeks, my colleagues were here and the discussions have been still on principles and practice of teaching. But for today, we're going to look at the principles of effective teaching. Now, we have established right from the beginning of the course till now that the goal for teaching, every teaching, is for learning to take place. If that has been said, then what then is effective teaching, or who is an effective teacher? So for our level, we would appreciate an effective teacher to be that teacher who provides series of learning experiences so that at the end of the day, his or her teaching will yield the intended outcomes. In other words, I have said earlier that the goal for teaching is for learning to take place. So an effective teacher is that teacher who provides series of teaching learning activities so that at the end of the teaching session, learning will take place. If you just joined us, this is a radio lecture on the course EDC 232, Principles and Practice of Teaching. Now, what then are principles? What is a principle? I know if it were to be the normal face-to-face interaction, most of you would have shared some of the principles you have as students in UEW. So just think aloud and put some of your principles down. When we get to the normal face-to-face interaction, probably we may share amongst ourselves. For purposes of today's lecture, in education, principles may refer to the essential or the vital or the fundamental practices that guides the teacher in order for learning to take place. In other words, the principles, as far as education is concerned, a principle is something fundamental. When we say a principle, we are looking at that concept which is so fundamental. We are looking at that which is a practice that guides a teacher throughout his or her teaching interaction. In other words, when someone calls him or herself a teacher, it is expected that he demonstrate certain principles in the classroom. It is not like going to the class to do things like you wish to do, but there are certain principles, there are certain things that are so fundamental that needs to guide you in the classroom. And so this evening we are going to look at some of these principles that serves as a guide to the teacher whenever teaching and learning is ongoing. We're going to look at the principle of understanding, the principle of involvement, the principle of sequencing, continuity. There are so many, so we're going to take a few and look at what they are and to what extent that they guide teachers during instructional session. And so first of all, let's look at the principle of understanding. The principle of understanding, as we have already established that the goal for teaching is for learning is to take place. Then if we say that there is a principle known as the principle of understanding, I think that from here we can deduce, if we say that the goal for teaching is to enhance learning, is to make sure that learning takes place, then before that learning can take place, students or learners ought to have understood whatever was taught. Hence the principle of understanding. Now usually after every teaching session, in as much as series of evaluation exercises are conducted, teachers sometimes ask, do you understand? Sometimes ironically they respond, no sir, or no madam. When that happens, it means that learning has not taken place. That is what the principle is saying. Do you understand? Principle of understanding. Do you understand the lesson? Do you understand this topic? Do you understand that? Once a student says no, it means that learning has not taken place yet, or understanding hasn't taken place. Irrespective of the fact that you, the teacher, think you were punctual, you are so regular in class, your lesson note is always intact, no matter what you do, if at the end of the day students claim that they do not understand what you taught, then you have violated the principle of understanding. I emphasize again that one of the principles of teaching is that there is the need for students to understand whatever has been taught. So if students say that they do not understand a teaching, a concept, or it means that learning hasn't taken place, because we have already said that the goal for teaching is for learning to take place. So if students tell you that they do not understand something, it means that they haven't understood it, and for that matter, that principle has been violated. Now, let's move on to see the second principle. We also have the principle of appropriate and effective use of resources. We are looking at two key things there. The principle of appropriate and effective. What it means is that a teacher can have a resource, but the resource could be ineffective. A teacher can have an appropriate resource, but it could be ineffective, or vice versa. The resource could be inappropriate depending on the level that you are teaching. With respect to resources, we are looking at the various teaching and learning materials or resources that facilitate teaching and learning in the classroom. And so resources such as laboratories, books, resource persons that we even invite depending on the nature of the topic we're teaching, they are also part. The classroom environment itself is a resource that to a larger extent guides for effective teaching to take place. And so, with the principle of appropriate and effective use of resources, there are so many things that you have to consider. For instance, research has shown that children at the early grade learn best when they fidget with the real objects, the realia, when they are allowed to practice what they are being taught. And so if you go to a KG1 class with your projector and then you mount, you project to them your lecture slides, believe you me, they might be only be admiring the pictures and the animations on the slide, but not the content of what have been written on it. And so what this principle is telling us is that whatever resource you select to guide your teaching and learning, so that at the end of the day it leads to an understanding, consider the age of your learners, consider the level at which they are, and select the best or the appropriate resources. It is the same way if you send a resource person to go and deliver a long lecture or talk to pupils in class 1. My friend, most of them may end up sleeping. They may be seeking permission to go out, visit washrooms here and there. But you and I will understand that the level that we find ourselves, at least from JHS or senior high school, some of this lecture series can be used in teaching. That is not to say that at that level of teaching we cannot equally make use of the real objects. No, that is not the point we are making. And so before you select your resources, consider the background, the level, the nature of the topic itself that you're going to teach. Moving on, we can still look at another principle of teaching. We have the principle of self-activity. Yes. I keep reminding you, dear students, that the goal for teaching is not a rush to cover every topic in the syllabus or the curriculum, but for what? For learning to take place. And so, as part of that, we have a principle of self-activity. What then is that principle of self-activity? When the student is under the instruction of a teacher. The principle of self-activity is telling us that the students need to be actively involved in the teaching learning process. Now, when we find ourselves in church, for instance, as the sermon is ongoing, sometimes we do hear people shout, "Boho biom," preach on. Sometimes they clap. Sometimes the congregation shouts, "Amen." This communicates to us that the congregants are involved in the activities that are ongoing in church service. It is the same way that in teaching and learning, we need to involve the learners in the lesson. How do we involve them in our lesson? For instance, we need to make room for them to ask questions. We need to make them undertake projects. And so just like I'm doing now, I have already said that with time the phone lines will be activated so that you phone in to contribute to the lecture that is ongoing. And this principle will guide me to check whether you really understand, and at the end of the day, we will decide whether learning has taken place. So it is important that we involve our learners in the lesson. If you just joined us, this is Radio WINNEBA 98.3 FM. We're having a radio lecture discussion on the course EDCR 232, Principles and Practice of Teaching. The phone lines will be activated and that will be communicated to you. And as I stated earlier, when you make your call or send a message, we would give you the opportunity to share with us one principle about a teacher who taught you way back at basic school, senior high, or it could even be this place. And so you will get that opportunity. Then you proceed by asking your question or seeking for your clarification. So far, we have looked at 3 of the principles of teaching. We have looked at the principle of understanding. We have looked at the principle of self-activity. We have looked at the principle of understanding. Now, we're going to look at another principle of teaching, of course, the 3rd principle. This has to do with the principle of sequencing and continuity. This is the 4th principle. We're going to look at the principle of sequencing and continuity. What are we sequencing and what are we continuing? The principle of sequencing and continuity in teaching is the systematic order and skills that the subject matter is presented. Principle of sequencing, continuity. We're looking at the order in which the skills and the subject matter is presented to learners. So that is the principle about that. Here, we do not present lessons haphazardly. You cannot go and conduct evaluation before you go and review your students' previous knowledge. We're going to look at all these things later in the course, but I know that since we have all gone through instruction before, we know we are familiar with some of these ways. First of all, when a teacher goes to class, what does he do till he leaves? Things are not presented anyway. How do we select the subject matter? If you look at the beginning of this course, for instance, from the beginning, we expose ourselves to the nature of teaching and teaching philosophy, actually. And so we looked at the concept of teaching, what it meant, the difference between teaching, instruction, and we are moving in that systematic order. Last week we were looking at teaching as a science, as an art. Today we're looking at the principles of effective teaching. Subsequent ones we'll be looking at the qualities of a good teacher. Then we'll progress by looking at integrated pedagogies and that. If you take a look at the course outline, which you all have, you will realize that the material, the subject matter is being presented to you in a systematic order, so you can quickly identify the sequence at which the course is unfolding. It is the same way that you realize that concepts in geography that you are studying is not mixed up with everything. All the courses have been arranged in an order and they are being presented to you in a logical manner, taking into consideration the difficulty level of the various knowledge exposed in the course. We have another principle known as the principle of selection. So we've looked at the principle of understanding, the principle of appropriate and effective use of resources. We've looked at the principle of self-activity. We've looked at the principle of sequencing and continuity. Now we're looking at the principle of selection. What are we selecting here? Now, this has to do with what to teach, how to teach it, what to assess, and then how to assess. In other words, we look at the principle of selection looks at what to teach. So the subject matter, what topic am I going to teach today? Okay, if I'm going to teach, say, matter, how am I going to teach matter? Now, after teaching, of course, you need to do some form of assessment to check whether learning has taken place. And so, still on the principle of selection, we have what is known as what to assess. So, which areas of the subject matter are you going to assess? If you are going to assess them on liquid, gases, or solids, then how are you going to conduct the assessment? Is it going to be a pencil and paper written test? Is it going to be an oral test? Is it going to be a case study, a project? Principle of selection. So there are principles that guide what we select to teach, and then in addition to that, we have principles to follow in selecting the learning experiences. So with the principle of selection, it has to do with what to teach, how to teach it, what to assess, and then how to assess it. We have another principle known as the principle of adequate preparation. The principle of adequate preparation. Dear students, I know that you prepared adequately before coming here. Before you gain admission into UEW to come and read the course or the program you're reading, I'm sure that as one of your preparations, you knew that you had to pass the WASI examination, which will give you the required grades in order to gain admission to read the programs you are reading. And so before you gain admission here, you were preparing on that. You had to prepare your finances very well, because you'll be buying books, you'll be paying for academic user fees here and there, and as well as hostels, amongst other things. The point I'm making is that when it comes to teaching, we don't just wake up from bed and then we run to the classroom as if we are being chased by thieves or armed robbers. We sit down, we plan before entering the classroom to teach. And so the preparation too needs to be adequate, because you can't continue with the principle of preparation when you are already teaching the subject in the classroom. So as part of your preparation, the adequate preparation to go and teach, you need to read wide around the topic you're going to teach, the subject you are teaching. You need to be well versed in the topic. You need to look out for resources. In fact, it is not at the teaching phase or the implementation phase that is where you begin to ask students, so which resource will I use to teach you this concept? No. You need to prepare on, or you need an advanced preparation on all these before you enter the classroom to teach. The writing of the lesson note is another thing that we cannot leave out as far as the principle of adequate preparation is concerned. In fact, when you're writing the lesson note, that is what is going to guide you in terms of what to teach, what to evaluate, which activities am I going to engage my students in, what are the teaching methods that I'm going to use. And so we need to take all these things important. I repeat, as one of the principles of effective teaching, we have the principle of adequate preparation. And the principle of adequate preparation has to do with the advanced preparation that a teacher does about the topic he or she is going to teach. Yeah, those of you reading this course, ideally you are being trained to go and teach. You and I would realize that in as much as the nation needs teachers, in fact, effective and efficient teachers in the field. We do not go to various homes to, just appoint family, just tell family heads to appoint people to go and fill vacancies in the classrooms for us. No, that is not what is done. As far as the teaching profession is concerned, before you can come out as an effective teacher, you ought to have gone through training, either at the College of Education or at the university, in order to prepare you adequately enough to meet the demands in the classroom. I hope you are getting me. And so the teaching as a profession, as we have already looked at, we prepare teachers. Nobody was born with a written profession on his or her forehead. We are all prepared in one way or the other to fit whichever profession or career that we find ourselves in. And even on that, we continue to prepare ourselves so that we will be current to meet the changing needs or the emerging trends in the various subject areas that we teach in. So the principle of adequate preparation is very important as far as effective teaching is concerned. If you just joined us, this is Radio WINNEBA 98.3 FM. We're having a radio lecture on the course EDCL 232, the principles and practice of teaching. I'm left with about 15 minutes, after which the phone lines will be activated and you'll be expected to make contributions to the lecture that is ongoing. You can ask your questions, seek for clarifications, and then, as I said earlier, you will be given the opportunity to share one principle that a teacher who might have taught you way back in primary JHS. I know that nobody came here without going through primary JHS or senior high, and so you'll be expected to share a principle about that teacher which has brought about a positive change on your life. We are looking at the principles of teaching. We have looked at the principle of understanding, the principle of sequencing and continuity, the principle of self-activity, the principle of adequate preparation, etc. So we are moving on. The principles are so many. We may not be able to do justice to all of them, though. We also have the principle of review or recapitulation. And so by this, during the teaching and learning session, as one of the principles of an effective teacher, you need to intermittently ask questions to test learners' understanding. You need to intermittently ask questions to test whether they understand what is being taught. So it is important that as student teachers, we are identified, or we identify ourselves with this principle, the principle of review. Reviewing to find out their background knowledge, and then from there, during the teaching and learning session, from time to time, you ask questions to test students' understanding. We have another principle of creating an active learning environment. The key word here is active. The learning environment needs to be serene. The environment has to be that which will foster understanding at the end of the lesson. How do we create that active learning environment? In the classroom, we need to, as teachers, effective teachers, you need to create an atmosphere that the learners will be actively involved in the lesson. Look at for furniture layout. How are they arranged? Is it that some of the students have their hairs outside whilst their legs are inside? Are all the desks facing you? Are they facing a particular direction? Apart from that, the sitting arrangement of the students themselves. How do we get all the students actively involved in the lesson? That can be achieved when you don't focus on only the few ones in front of you. In fact, in every teaching and learning session, all learners are expected to take part in the lesson. That is why when we're writing our learning objectives, for instance, we say that by the end of the lesson, the learner we individualize the teaching and learning process. We don't make it learners, so that when you have a class size of about 45, once you have about 2 of them demonstrating that they understand, you think that learning has taken place. No. By the end of the lesson, the learner. So if you have 60 students in there, all of them needs to be involved in the lesson. You have to create an enabling learning environment where all of them will feel free. And all these are principles of effective teachers. If you are not an effective teacher, you may not be able to do this. That is why this course is so important. We are telling you, or we are teaching, we are reminding ourselves that as student teachers, we need to create that serene learning environment where our students will feel free to share, to take interest in our lessons, where everything will be in a systematic order, so that once somebody enters or a visitor comes around, we know that yes, in fact, this is an effective class. Everybody is working. Some students are not sleeping whilst others are doing the work. You give out a group work, and as human as students are, the lazy ones may hide behind and leave the work for only the group leaders to do. So you, the teacher, have to strategize, create that environment, so that during the period, all of them will have a take in the lesson. You need to also make sure that all the students are focusing, their attention is on the lesson. That is why we are being exposed to the course Psychology of Learning. So we have all done that as education students. Every teacher, ideally to a larger extent, you need to know your students. When you are teaching and you're a good observer, an effective teacher for that matter, you can read the facial expression on your students, and then you take an action from there. And so all these things are some of the ways and means by which we can identify ourselves with this principle. Again, we have the principle of helping learners to manage their time productively. Principle of helping learners to manage their time productively. Some of the learners in the learning environment, they may not even know the reason why they are there. Some of them see schooling, especially the younger ones over there, they see it as a punishment, because their parents would have to wake them up on time, prepare them for school. So by age 6, they are even tired of schooling. Now, it is up to you as they are advancing and growing up as effective teachers in the classroom. When they get to the level where they begin to understand themselves very well, even at the senior high level, you may find students there who may think that, oh, it's free SHS and everybody is going. I also passed. That is why I'm going. So some of them may not use their time productively. Whilst it is prep time, that is where others may want to go into their troubles to find some food to eat. Whilst their colleagues are in class, library, learning, that is where some of them may decide to sit around and then gossip. So as an effective teacher, it is not only the subject matter which you go and then stand before them and teach. you need to keep advising them how to manage their time in the classroom. Even this place, we also need that principle. Some of us do not know how to manage our time productively. We are looking at productivity here. So whatever you spend time on as a student here needs to yield to something positive. You don't have to waste your time on unproductive things. At this age, we know we are matured, and so if you align yourself with this principle, that is where one day when you find yourself in the classroom, you would keep and help your learners to manage their time. When you give them a given task, for instance, if you don't provide them with the necessary guidance, some may stay on the task the whole day doing other things. So it behooves you, the teacher, to provide them that assistance, so that at the end of the day, whatever they spend time on will yield a positive result. Hence the principle of time management as far as effective teaching is concerned. We also need to ensure that we demand quality work from our students. In fact, we often hear garbage in, garbage out. If you prepare your students if you align yourself to almost all these principles we are talking about, you realize that you will expect nothing than the best from your students. But if you do not prepare, you go to the classroom and you do things anyhow, at the end of the day, the students will provide anything for you. And you may also be okay with that thing they provide for you. If you prepare very well, if you align yourself with the various principles we are going through this evening, you prepare adequately your resources, you sequence, and then in terms of the subject matter, you sequence. There is a principle of sequencing and continuity which you do not violate. You use all the appropriate resources, prepare very well, and all that. Your students will know that at the end of the day, to whom much is given, much is expected. So once all things have been presented to them, you will not settle on anything, but rather settle on the best. So you have to demand that quality from them. At this time, I think we can activate the phone lines whilst I continue with the discussion on the other principles of teaching. If you just joined us, this is Radio WINNEBA 98.3 FM, and we're having a radio lecture on the principles of effective teaching. We are looking at the principles, and I've said that if you phone in, you'll be given the opportunity to share with us that principle about a teacher who has taught you before, or to some extent a teacher who is now teaching you. So you can as well as send us your text messages on 0503 923158. The studio lines are 0503 923158 and 0332 320201. You can WhatsApp and then send your SMS on 0503 9231 and then 58. So I continue. We have another principle of providing timely and constructive feedback. How do we provide timely and constructive feedback? Now, when we teach, the principle of providing timely and constructive feedback is that, assuming after teaching a topic, you evaluate the lesson, you give the students some exercise to do, you have to provide them with the feedback on time. You do not need to, put down their exercise book somewhere without even marking. They need a feedback on how far they have understood what you are teaching. They need to know what went wrong and then what did not go wrong. But come to think of it, as an effective teacher, what do you think of yourself if you give an exercise or a test or an end of term paper and you go and you don't mark them, you hide them for reasons best known to you? How will you check whether they understood? I think it is from the marking that you can identify areas that the students did very well, areas that perhaps they did not understand something, of which probably you could arrange for a remediation for them. So the principle of providing timely and constructive feedback provides enough information for you, the teacher yourself, as well as the learners. You, the teacher, might want to know how far the concept have been understood. You might want to know areas that they need you need to further clarify, or areas where there will be the need for you to do or organize some form of remediation. At the same way, the learners will also need the feedback from that assessment that you conducted, so that it will guide them to know whether what they actually got, where is it taking us. So I had 5/10. It means that I need to do better. It means that I had this wrong or had this right. What is the reason behind it? Then you can all proceed from there. We are going to look at another principle of effective teaching. Now we have the principle of enhancing motivation to learn. Principle of enhancing motivation to learn. In fact, we need to motivate our learners. I have said earlier that to some of the students, they see learning as a punishment. So you go to them, you give them a given task, do this, do that, and to them they think you are punishing them, because some of them do not even know the reason why they are there at the first place. So motivation. Gone were the days when the little attempt students made to take part in the lessons, sometimes the feedback that teachers give them is not encouraging enough for them to be motivated to do more. Sometimes, okay. Hello, dear caller, your name and your department.
My name is Adebe Mensah from Economics Department.
Mensah from Economics, yes.
Yes. My first question is on principles of understanding.
Principle of understanding, okay.
Yes. When you were explaining earlier, you said each and every student is supposed to understand what you taught them in the classroom.
Sure.
So if you ask them a question that you understand, then some students will say yes. So what if you ask them that question?
Can you repeat that again? You ask a question and then what?
I said if you ask them a question, do you understand? And they say yes. Mm-hmm. But only one or two say no. So that one, you said the teaching has taken place or not.
Okay. Mensah, thank you for your question. Yeah, can you share with us a principle of a teacher who taught you way back? Okay, yeah. Hello, Mensah.
Okay, can I say principles of self-appearance?
Principle of self-appearance.
Appearance, yes.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
For the teacher.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for your call.
Okay.
All right. Mensah from Economics Department. Yeah, we have another call on there. Hello, your name and your department. This is Radio WINNEBA.
Hello.
Can you move away from your radio set, please? It's giving us feedback.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening. Your name and your department?
I'm Portia from French department.
Portia, French. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to talk show more light about principle of adequate preparation.
Good. Good, you can go ahead. Oh, we've missed we've missed okay, all right. Yeah, Mensa, you call to find out whether when you teach and you ask the students, do you understand? They all respond, yes, sir. And then unfortunately, we have two, should we say naughty boys at the back who say, no, sir. You want to find out whether learning has taken place or whether they understood. The issue is that once, in as much as we do ask students, you say they may give you the answer, yes, sir, but it's up to you to ask few questions, because if they continue giving you that whole class answer, the shy ones may never get. So once somebody doesn't understand, you have to go back. Learning hasn't taken place yet. They said they don't understand. So you probe which areas or which area do you have problems with, then you help address it. Other than that, you haven't fulfilled that principle. I made it earlier that there is an objective behind that. And even in the writing of our instructional objectives, we say by the end of the lesson, the learner. So if a student tells you that he or she doesn't understand, you need to address that so that you all sail on the same level. Yeah, the studio lines are still active. The numbers are 0503 923158. You can send us your WhatsApp and your text messages as well. Okay, I was on the principle of enhancing motivation to learn, and I made mention of the fact that sometimes the students themselves, in fact, it's like everybody is going to the school, so me too, let me go some. That is why they are here. It is up to you to motivate them. Gone were the days when students will tell you, students answer questions and sometimes teachers respond, Jimmy, so from all this I've said, are you telling me that you didn't hear, hey, you walk out of my class, and all those things? Please, irrespective of the level that we are teaching, we need to, pamper and motivate them. Even when they get 0/5, you tell them, please, you can do more. I know your abilities. I know your capabilities. I keep saying that when you teach, for instance, in English language, we have an aspect known as the composition. And composition, unless the student doesn't even put a full stop on the paper, unless the student doesn't write anything, even when you write that essay and then you deviate, you are giving something for expression. After deviating, you are giving something for expression. At least you get something there. So in the learning environment, the fact that you do all the teaching with everything, if the learners are still not getting, you need to keep motivating them. You can do better. Thumbs up. Cheers. You don't have to always clap for only those who give perfect answers. No, that is not the point. And so for the first time, there is this student who usually scores between 0 and 3. And then for the first time, when he scores 5 out of 20, you need to applaud him or her for moving away from that column. That is the point you are making. Motivate them. They did something, they didn't get it well. You have to keep pushing them. Tell them, inspire them. You can do better, do more. But if you rather dampen your spirit, that, Kweku Menu, with this your grade, I don't think any university in this world will give you admission. Right from there, you have demoralized the person. In fact, you have demotivated the person. He or she may not even want to do more. Okay? So we need to motivate them. Motivation is very important in teaching and learning, and we should always vary them. We have another principle known as the principle of teacher-learner and learner-learner interaction and communication. The principle of teacher-learner and learner-learner communication. Okay, so before I go to that, we have some text messages here. This one is, please, good evening. I am Nanaya Oboache Noah from Hypers Department. Under the principle of understanding, if a teacher teaches and most of the students don't understand, does it mean learning has taken place or not? Thanks. Yes, Nanaya, if you teach and most of them tell you that they don't understand, it means that learning hasn't taken place. All right, we have yes, hello, caller. Please, can you move away from your set? You are giving us feedback. This is dangerous to our health.
Okay, madam.
Yes. Your name and the department.
Please, my name is Alasan Mohammed, French department.
Mohammed, French. Yeah. Mohammed, yes, let's go.
Yeah, this, assuming in your class, there is a student, anytime you teach, he or she doesn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you give them exam, he or she doesn't perform very well.
Mm-hmm.
He performs below average.
Okay.
So is it always good to demote such a student? And then if you demote the person and then he or she continues that way, how will you advise her?
You said you asked whether is it important for you to demote the person? Is it demote?
Yes.
Mohammed, demote.
Yeah, like when they are assuming that that student is in maybe class 2.
Yeah.
Then the following year they are going to class 3. Then because he or she does
so
not perform well,
you want to repeat the student,
yes,
right?
Repeat.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So you want to find out whether it is good or not?
Yes.
Okay. That will be addressed. Mohammed wants to find out whether he can repeat a student who he realizes that is not doing so well at the level that he or she finds himself. Mohammed. Okay. Hello, caller. Your name and your department. Hello.
This is Solomon. Hello. Yeah, I'm Solomon Kolkwad, calling from economic department.
Econs. Great. Let's go.
Okay, so madam, I want to ask about the principle of enhancing motivation to learning.
Okay.
Yeah, please. If you are a teacher and then you've been motivating your students, I mean, anytime they perform in class, and then there are some people who doesn't, learn, and then they keep on failing. Now, the way our educational system is structured, whereby caning is not allowed. Having been a teacher, is it prudent to use cane to correct a student, or let me say caning as a positive reinforcement to the student to learn?
Okay, so Solomon, if I heard you very well, you want to find out whether you can use you want to find out whether you can use the cane to motivate your students.
Yes, please.
And unfortunately, caning has been banned, so you don't know how to motivate your students again.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It will be addressed. Okay. All right. Solomon, let me take it from there. The caning that does not really motivate students to learn. You know, if students are not doing well on a program, if they are not doing well on the subject you are teaching them, you think that the caning them will be the best way for them to learn. It's like forcing a horse to the river, but you can decide whether to drink or not. So motivation is not about caning. In fact, caning is a form of punishment. You are punishing the child because he or she could not do ABCD. Motivation goes beyond the caning. It is not only about caning. Ask yourself, inspire them. Give them more room to behave in a positive way. That is what we're talking about. Advices. And there are so many things. As for the caning, it has been banned, and it has been banned for good. And so you rather have to, depending on the level that you are teaching, you rather have to look out for other means to reinforce them. Reinforcement is key. You have to look out for other means. Some people clap for them. If you are at the lower level, sometimes a handshake, now that COVID is around, we can't give that. But high five in the air. If you tell them that, no, you can do better, do more. Let them feel, let them have that edge to always want to learn more. That is where they will be motivated to do more. So it is about how you teach. Sometimes when students are not interested or when they are not motivated to learn, it is not about the topic. It is about how you are presenting the subject matter to them. Present it in a nice and interesting way, and they will be motivated to learn. But if you go there and they don't really get any good use of whatever is happening, they may not be motivated. Self-motivation is there. Present it in a lively manner. Present it in a way that they will be wanting for more. So that when you teach and then your period is over, they will not even, they would wish that you stay with them for a while. Okay, so, we have some text messages here. Madam, please, good evening. I'm Afum, yeah, from Ismaila from Geography Department. I don't know how to say this, but from my past years in primary JHS, SHS, indeed there are good teachers and some whom I'm sorry to say are bad teachers. My geography teacher was, okay, I will not mention the name. Indeed, the principle he exhibited is the principle of understanding, and even to my understanding now as a level 200 student, for not understanding to take place, meaning there is no effective teaching. This teacher makes sure that we understand. That is good. So I'll end it there. Good. Good evening, madam. It's exhilarating to hear about these principles, and I owe my desire to teach to one madam, I will not mention the name, who taught me in JHS. Okay, yeah. So far we are getting good feedback from our teachers. Let's keep it up. Matthias from English department. Great. We have another one here. There are certain teachers, when you ask them certain questions, they will ask you to go and find out. I want to know their classification. Thanks. Okay. Good evening, please. Is there a principle of repetition? I think Portia actually called in, so that have been said. Yeah. Okay. So yes, if a teacher asks you to go and find out for yourself, you go and find out whatever you gather. You go and then tell her. If you don't understand it, you have to make sure that you also tell him or her that I gathered this, but I did not. It depends on the area. Yeah, we can't just conclude that if he says go and find out. For all you know, it is something that he has given you as an assignment, and you are telling him or her you don't understand. Good evening, madam. I'm David McLean from the Home Economics Department. Please, madam, in a situation where a teacher teaches a particular topic and after assessing them, they all failed. Please, in that case, can you say that the teacher values the principle of adequate preparation? Okay, and a whole lot. Yeah. Yes, if you teach and your students, they at the end they all failed, it means that not only the principle of understanding has been violated, in fact, a whole lot of principles have been violated in that. My name is Kuma from Hypers Department about the principle of sequencing and continuity. I have prepared my lesson plan, but won't conform sequentially due to acquisition of TLMs appropriate. What should you do as a teacher? So Kuma from Hypers Department wants to find out that he has prepared very well, but there are no TLMs. So what does he do? The principle is saying that adequate preparation and effective use of resources. So if you don't add that to it, you have violated that principle. All right. So I think Mohammed from French, you called to find out whether if the students don't understand, whether you can repeat them. Repetition, I learned it has also been banned, but yeah, that is if you see, if you are guided or if you align yourself with all the principles we're talking about, or majority of them, you realize that there will be no way that you will teach and then at the end of the day all your students will fail. That is why as student teachers, we are reading this course. That is the more reason why we need to take it very serious, so that at the end of the day, I mean, we wouldn't find any student who doesn't merit at least a pass to move on to the next level. Okay, so yes, the phone lines are still activated. You can send us your text messages and your WhatsApp messages on the various studio lines 0503 923158. And okay, so we have more text messages here. Good evening, madam. I'm David McLean. I think I've read this. David McLean, and okay, there's one here. Good evening, madam. Yeah, we've gone through almost all of them. From David, from that is the English department, geography. Okay, madam, I'm Techi Ampofo Ales, political science department. My question is that you have 40 students, and after the lesson 35 of them understood the lesson. The other 5 did not understand. Does it mean I have to teach the lesson again? I think somebody phoned in and I responded to this. You have about 40. Okay. So Techi, I'll respond to that. Bismarck Gandhi from English department. My class 1 teacher, late, okay, he's late, so we can mention the name. Late Mr. Isaiah Aqua applied the principle of self-activity. By that, he provides numerous word cards, allows us to pick one, spell it, and pronounce that particular word when teaching literacy. This helped us to build our vocabulary. Good one there from Isaac. So, Mr. Isaac, wherever you are, may your soul rest in peace. Techi, yes, your students in class, I have said that if you teach and a student tells you that, this aspect I didn't get it, and if it doesn't merit you to move on, we are not saying that the feedback you receive should be perfect. The principle is not saying that the students should give you perfect answers or they need to get perfect scores 100% before you can move on. No, but at least it should be something encouraging. Okay, so you teach and then 5 students, what if they all score below 10%? If they all scored 10%, if the 5 students score 10%, what are you going to do? It is going to cost them a whole lot. So you need to provide extra remediation. You need to provide extra teaching, extra assistance to these students. Okay, so when you are even reviewing it or in a nice way, you try and then focus on those few, the 5 who do not really get it, before you move on to the next one. We have Memuna from economics department. Under the principle of selection, a teacher will teach and assess learner orally, but when it gets to the written aspect, the learner performs poorly. Does that mean learning has taken place? Memuna, you teach and then you ask. That is when you rely on the whole class response. Do you understand? Yes, madam. Once you hear that yes, madam, you may be misled. You may think that all of them. Okay, so when that happens, that is where when you give them an exercise, some of them will be getting 0 or they will be failing. And then you realize that you have violated the principles. I'm not saying you shouldn't ask them, do you understand? But when you ask, you need, as a psychologist, being a teacher, to also probe by asking them series of questions around it to determine whether they really understand. So it is not advisable that we rely on that chorus answers they give us, the chorus answers. It is not advisable that we rely on it at all. Okay. All right. Moving on. Let's look at the principle of encouraging teacher-learner and learner interaction and communication. In the classroom, communication needs to be balanced. We do not have to rely on the communication between only you and the students. In fact, it should be something that is cyclic. So there's communication going on between you, the teacher, and the learner, and then amongst the learners. You need to communicate with them. So in the classroom, it is important that in as much as the subject or the topic is being taught, the teacher needs to be interacting with the students. The students need to be interacting with themselves. The point here is that we are not saying it should turn into a marketplace where you will be doing some own talking, the students will also be engaged with. No, that is not what we are saying. But you will give them activities that will enable them to interact with each other. We are going to proceed by looking at other subtopics on this course, so we will be looking at that. At the same time, you need to have that form of communication between you. So both verbal and the non-verbal forms of communication should communicate the lesson. You are going to have interaction between the subject matter, the topic you are teaching, the teacher, and then the learner. So at the end of the day, all these should be involved in the classroom. All these things needs to be seen. Communication shouldn't be one-sided. Teacher asks questions and then students respond, that's all. Or teacher goes to the classroom, do all the talking and then full stop. The learners along the line, they need to be given work to be done where necessary, even in groups. They'll be interacting. Choose an elbow partner, discuss ABCD with him or her. You give them a group where they are expected to present. Some of them debate depending on the level and then the topic you are teaching. This is connected to the principle of teamwork, cooperation, and then collaboration. It is just connected to that. It needs to be there so that when you are all going or climbing higher, then it means you are all going together. If you just joined us, we still having a radio lecture. We have some few minutes to get ourselves out of here. We're still having a discussion on the course EDCR 232, Principles and Practice of Teaching. We're looking at the principles of effective teaching. And those who just closed from lectures, we identified that principles are vital. They are practices that guide every teaching and learning. And so we also made mention of the fact that the goal for teaching is for learning to take place. We identify some of the principles that guide effective teaching and learning in the classroom. We made mention of the principle of understanding. We made mention of the principle of appropriate and effective use of resources, where we identified that teaching and learning resources like the labs, computer labs, science labs, books, even resource persons that we use, they need to be appropriate at the top for the topic we are teaching, at the level that we are teaching, so that at the end of the day, learning will take place. We identify the principle of self-activity, where we need to allow the students to take part in the topic or on the lesson that we are teaching. Sequencing and continuity were not left out. And when the phone I think the phone lines are still activated. Mohammed, Solomon, Mimuna, and Co have shared their thoughts with us. Some have phoned in. And so, if you just close from lectures, this is Radio WINNEBA 98.3 FM. You can also phone in, send us a text message or a WhatsApp message on the principles of effective teaching. The studio lines remain 0503 923158 and 0332 3202 01. You can send your WhatsApp and text messages via 0503 923158. The various social media handles are Radio WINNEBA, Facebook, Radio WINNEBA at 98.3 FM, Twitter at WINNEBA 983 FM, Instagram, YouTube, Radio WINNEBA 98.3 FM. We are live on Facebook. Okay, so those who just joined us, we've been looking at the principle of adequate preparation, where we also said that resources needs to be adequately prepared. We need to plan our lessons in advance so that we can cater for the various things that we need, the various resources that would help us in the teaching and learning. We have a final principle which has to do with the principle of individual differences. Individual difference. In fact, it is key. Every teaching and learning session should be guided by all these principles. What is the principle of individual differences? In the classroom, we have students with special needs. Some of the students with special needs may be the visually impaired, the hearing impaired, the physically challenged, etc. Apart from this, we need to know that every effective teacher needs to be aware of the fact that the needs of learners are never the same, and they will never be the same. They have emotional needs, in fact, different emotional needs. They have social needs, which vary. Their physical needs also vary. The point we are making is that what will your pi r square and summation fx over summation whatever do to a learner who is learning on an empty stomach? It won't mean anything. So at this point, since their needs vary, it is important that as effective teachers, we guide them. We provide them with the necessary guidance. So don't take all your learners to be the same. They come from diverse backgrounds. So in your teaching and your learning, you need to vary your methods so that it will suit the various learning needs of our students. You shouldn't make or use examples from a particular that will suit a particular group of people. You need to vary because they are in the learning environment with diverse needs. So it is important that as we know the various backgrounds of our learners in teaching and learning, all these things serves as a guide to us. And so you are in the class, you have visually impaired in your class, for instance. If you keep using the projector, keep using without varying it, without reading and spelling letters out, you will not be fair to them. You need to vary it. If you have physically challenged in your class, how do you vary your teaching? How do you adequately prepare so that at the end of the day, they will not be left out in that activity? If you keep sending them out to the field to go and jump, to go and run, to do this, what about them? You need to equally provide a physical activity that will cater for their special needs. That is the point. Now, we have the principle of interest. The principle of interest. Now, the principle of interest is all about helping sustain our learners on the subject, the interest of our learners on the subject matter. In fact, with the principle of interest, every effective teacher needs to teach the lesson, the subject matter, in such a way that it will be so interesting to the learner. Students or learners at the adolescent age, they take so much interest in learning about reproductive health issues. So at that level, you realize that when you are teaching them around that area, they take so much interest in it. Especially, again, about reproductive health and those at the adolescent stage, they take so much interest in that. And so, this principle is telling us that the lesson we present, the way we go about the teaching, even if the topic is so archaic, even if the topic is not you think that it will be too difficult for them and all that, it is about how you prepare. It is about how you go about it. And these are personal skills that you, the teacher, can employ so that they will all have interest in the lesson. We have some few minutes to go, but let's go through these text messages from our dear students. This one reads, Matthias from English. Madam, is it true that when learners do not get immediate and constructive feedback, it kills their morale to learn? What do we do in the case of not having our results for 3 semesters now? Matthias from English department. Well noted, it will be addressed. We have this one too from, it says, good evening, madam. Please, my name, Yeletokum Gideon from Friend Department, level 200. Please, madam, concerning the principle of understanding, if you have tried all the possible means to help a learner, but it seems that the learner is not willing, what do you do to them? Okay, you keep motivating them. Good. Good evening, madam. I am Yao Raphael from Friend Department. My question is, assuming you teach a particular topic in a class and almost all the students understand, even yearn for more examples to solve, but one person does not understand, but the teacher has tried all that he can, but this student still does not. What else should the teacher do to help the particular student? Okay, Yao, you have done all your best, but since this particular student still says he's doing that, so all of you have to assess it. I don't know the level of understanding, but you have to assess so that he or she also understands. Please, good evening. My name is Eunice Chira, Economics Department. My question is based on the principle of understanding. As a teacher, should I spend a lot of time on a student for about 1 hour on a topic whilst the rest of the students understand? Okay, I think that is similar to yours own. Madam, I'm Techiampo for Alex Political Science Department. Madam, if you have 10 students who don't like coming to school and after exam they fail, does that mean that learning have not taken place? Okay, hello, madam. Please, I am Emmanuel Edu from Economics. Please, madam, can you throw more light on the principle of sequence and continuity? So from Ampo for Techi and Eunice Shada, you have done your best, you have done all that, and then Techi, you want to find that the students, they do not usually come to school, so you feel that as a result of the absenteeism, that is why they are not getting the concept. Yeah, so if that is it, find out the reason why they don't. If possible, organize extra remediation for them so that they will also get an understanding of that. Edu Emmanuel, yes, with the principle of, yeah, dear caller, hello, in your department. Yeah, your name, your department.
I'm calling. My name is not.
Your name, please. Please, can you move away from your radio set?
My name is not
Mohammed, okay, let's go.
My question with the principle of individual difference. In the situation whereby a teacher uses a local language, in which he or she there are students in the class who doesn't understand that particular language. How do we address that?
Okay. So I think this can be our final one. If you have other questions, you note them down. When we meet during the face-to-face, you can ask them. The principle of Mohammed, the principle of individual differences, and you asking if a teacher uses the local language at the detriment of the others in the classroom. Here it depends at the rate and the frequency at which the teacher uses that. If that happens, sometimes you need to draw the attention to the teacher that, oh, perhaps this thing you said I don't understand. But as student teachers, that is why we are going through this course. When we go out there, we shouldn't be using a particular language that the other students we have in the class may not get an understanding. But here again, it could mean that maybe the teacher is teaching, he has explained himself, just like your colleagues have sent messages here. If one person is not understanding, the teacher may switch to the language of that particular student or those group of students who are not getting, just to get a better understanding. But if it becomes a practice, a norm of the teacher to use a particular local language at the disadvantage of the others, then that is where the problem is. So if that happens, you have violated the principle of individual differences. And so at this to this end, we draw the curtains to an end. It's been interesting and exciting moments. Thank you all the callers, those of you who sent your WhatsApp messages and your text messages. All have been acknowledged. If you still have questions, I think note them down. When we meet during the face-to-face interaction, we will look at them. Today it has been wonderful. We've been looking at the principles of effective teaching, and we've gone through a whole lot of them. The principle, this reminds me, a student asked of the principle of sequencing and continuity. We are looking at the systematic order in which the subject matter is taught from one step to the other. This further clarification will be done when we meet face-to-face because our time is almost up. Thank you all the technical team for the wonderful work you've done. See you at same time next week. Bye-bye.